We are Skeptic and the Mystic. Deb and Heather here tonight. We're on episode 58, and we are continuing our, series. It's been a little bit interrupted series on the universal laws. And so tonight we are going to talk about the law of correspondence, which I'm finding these fascinating as we dive into them because we've all heard of the law of attraction. We started this by diving into the law of assumption. What else have we covered? Polarity, inspired action. I can't remember which ones.
Polarity. Well, we'll review them for that period. And because the teacher in me is like, oh, we got to review all of them.
Which we will. But what's so interesting about these is in every single case, you've been working with them all along. You just don't really know it. Or maybe you know it, but you may not know it. And so then this one is another one where as we've dove into it, I realize I've been operating this way for a very long time too. I just didn't know we called it the law of correspondence. Mm-hmm. So law of correspondence, basically saying what? Everything is, it's all interconnected, I guess, right? I mean, like how do you encapsulate it? Or shall we go to our...
Let's do a review first.
Let's do a review. Really, Deb needs a review.
Yeah. So before we review, I want to just say this. I realized, I had this aha the other day about manifestation, and people were like, I need to learn how to manifest. I'm not manifesting. And I've even said it myself. And then I was like, that's such BS. You're manifesting every single day, even if it's the things that you don't want, yep. Right? You are manifesting that and creating that in your world. If it's there in your life, there is a part of you that wanted it there in your life, which is a harsh truth for most people to hear.
Absolutely.
Included. I'm like, why do I keep dating these same kind of guys? And I'm like, oh, because there's a part of me that likes it.
On some level, the part of you, oftentimes, if it's the thing you feel like you're a victim of, it's some shadow side of you.
Mm-hmm.
But yep. If you ever find yourself being like, why does this always happen to me? Well, yeah, sorry, but you're the only common denominator.
Exactly. And, you say about like knowing this. I remember when I was a freshman in college, walking around campus when I first got there, and I had some bouts of wisdom every once in a while when I was in college. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the common denominator in my life. Like I'm the only thing that's here, that's there. Like I can't blame anybody else. And it was, I literally remember exactly where I was standing when I thought that. And it was just like, poof. And that essentially, we'll go back to the review, but that essentially is the law of correspondence, right? It's a mirror. What happens around us is a direct reflection of what's happening within us. Yeah. And so your internal environment determines your external environment.
Yes.
So if you look at your life, you can see what's going on now is all on the basis of what you've been thinking and feeling in the past.
Yes. Which, I mean, we talked about that when we talked about law of assumption, that's based on your self-concept and all of these laws, they really do overlap a ton. Mm-hmm. But as far as the whole idea of, extreme ownership or, you're the one common denominator, if we say that and that feels like incredibly uncomfortable to you and you want to be like, screw you guys, this is not my fault.
Right.
I want to flip the script on that and say, when you can embrace that, now you are in a seat of power. You have the ability to now change what you experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, to use the word empowering, it really is, because when we're blaming everybody else and everything else, like we can't do anything. But when we could say, okay, what's my part in this? Then we can start to do something about it. But if we're expecting everybody else to change, then it's like, well, you're not going to.
You truly can't change other people. You cannot change other people. You can only change yourself. Even your children. Try to change your children. Sorry, they're not you.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's just review. Okay. The laws that we talked about. So the law of assumption, which technically isn't one of the 12 universal laws, but it is a great law. And it's what started us on this. The law of assumption is that in order to change anything in your life, you have to change the beliefs and the assumptions that you hold about it. So when you change your assumptions and assume the presence of your desire is the only thing then that the presence of your desire is the only thing, right? That will bring about your desire. When you act as if like that thing has already happened, when you feel the feelings as if it's already happened, when you assume that it's done already, that's the law of assumption. Which I say this so much. I use this example all the time. When people are like, "Well, yeah, but all these things show me I can't assume that because all these things are telling me from the past, right, that this can't happen." And I love the example of the Wright brothers. Right? Is those guys literally saw things flying in the air when pretty much everybody around them was like, "No, there is no evidence to show you that you can get metal materials flying in the air." And they're
Mhm.
like, "Nope, we just know it." Like they assumed that it would happen. And then they just went into the law of inspired action, which is when you connect the feeling of the desire, you take that action that's inspired, right, from the thing that you already know has already happened. Right. So you're living in the future. Like, okay, if I was the person who created airplanes, what would this person do?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
It is so much easier when you live in that space than, "Oh, my past just sucks. It's just,
Yeah.
I've been broke, I've been
Yeah.
heartbroken, blah, blah, blah," right? You keep
Well,
getting
if you
that.
think of any, like Wright Brothers is an awesome example. Think of cell phones. Think of anything that once didn't exist and now does. It started as a thought. It started in someone's imagination.
Mhm.
So that's where you have to start.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then we talked about the law of polarity, which is that everything has two poles, right? We have North Pole, South Pole, light, dark, day, night, love, hate, good, evil. You cannot have like just good vibes only all the time. You cannot expect to be happy all the time without experiencing deep sadness.
You need the contrast. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to tell you, I had a session with someone the other day, and later they messaged me, and they're like, "I have been like started crying about this person that I don't even know that recently died." Like, and I was like, "That's so beautiful, right?" Because when you can feel that depth of sadness, we did a ton of clearing, and this person was able to feel that depth of sadness. I was like, then how much more can you feel the joy, right? I got something stuck in my throat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so the law of polarity is like know that it's all good. Like there's no bad or, like good. There's I mean there's bad, good, but like it's all neutral.
It's all part of the experience for sure.
Right.
Um, yeah. I mean, I think we've talked it's kind of a different topic, but the concept of bad, good, or something being wanted, unwanted, whatever, it's all the meaning that you give it, right? And this is all it's part of being human, as you said, good vibes only, that's some BS. Like it's meant to be an experience, it's meant to be a ride, and when you can embrace that, then you can enjoy. You can almost like I actually just listened to there's a great episode of the Doctor's Pharmacy that's fairly recent where he talks with some Dr. Jones somebody about why the how to find the joy in the so-called negative emotions.
Mhm.
It's really powerful. It's a really good, very interesting episode where they talk about the beauty of some of those so-called negative feelings because they really do. They give us information about ourselves. They allow us to experience life. I'm going on a tangent, but all of that does come back to this law of correspondence because when you make meaning of a feeling as something that's negative, you're going to continue to find those corresponding experiences
Nice.
versus if you can see it for, just the neutral experience that it is, and then move yourself toward more of those so-called positive feelings, the ones that you would truly like to experience, then you'll start to attract more of them. Yeah.
I'm sure I've probably told you this, but I've shared this story before about when I lost my baby when I was 20. And
Mhm.
at that point I had like my undergrad degree is in Bible. My emphasis was like, Bible with emphasis in leadership, right? And so like I grew up memorizing books of the Bible. You know, so when people are like, I don't know about some of this stuff, I'm with you. I get you. That's why I say I'm a skeptic, because there's so much a part of me that's like skeptical about this. But there's a story in the Bible that about in Genesis where Joseph, had all these brothers and they didn't like him because he was favored by his dad. So his brothers basically threw him in a well and left him for dead. And then he got rescued. Lots of stuff happened in between. He ends up becoming king, and there's a famine in the land, and his brothers go to him and they're like, will he remember us? Hopefully he won't notice us. And he does. And he says to them, you know, oh my gosh, he said, but basically like you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, meaning like him being put into in the end of the well. He's like, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for a good, for the saving of many lives. And like, had that not happened, then all these other things couldn't happen. And when I lost my baby, I clung to that so much. And I was like, this tragedy of losing my child, I'm going to make it be something good. And that's when I like was involved in ministry to high school kids and like help mentor so many kids and talk to people about the emotional perils, like all the emotional stuff that comes with having an abortion. And like, there's so many things and that's a whole other topic I know right now, but like I was able to use it to help people instead of, I'm terribly broken. Don't get me wrong. I have my own healing that had to happen. There was a lot of stuff that still had to happen, but I didn't wallow in the, like, this is just a terrible thing. Yeah. It was, no, I'm going to use it for good.
Yeah. I mean, such a big difference. Yeah, not to say you can't give yourself permission to be sad about something. Like, yes, be there, experience it. We talk about that all the time too. Let yourself experience the emotions, but also allow them to move out and make room for the experiences you might deem more positive.
Yeah, that was a dog. I don't know if you just heard that noise, but that was the dog. Yeah. So the law of correspondence, like we said, it is just a direct reflection. Now, this is where some people are like, okay, yeah, but what about the starving people in Africa? Of course, that type of question always comes up. Right. And again, like we have to zoom out the lens, and this is where it's going to get wackadoo, right? But there's a belief, one line of belief that before you came down to earth, you decided, hey, I want to experience life, as someone who, lives in the middle of the desert and has to fight for their food. Or I'm going to experience life as, like we talked about, when John was on last week, about, I'm going to experience life this time as, a middle-class woman. Oh, I'm going to experience life as this. Mm-hmm. So when people are like, I didn't make that choice, there are people who believe that, yes, you did make that choice before your soul came down into the body and you just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah.
That's hard to grasp.
That is hard to grasp. That is a hard one to reconcile. And I will admit, sometimes even if I, think about like, okay, I'm capable of creating any life I want. Yeah, I do sometimes struggle with like, what gives me the right, because certainly, I never want this to come across as we don't acknowledge that there are some systemic roadblocks for some people, right? There are certain things that make a practice more difficult for some populations than others. For sometimes the experiences that you've had in your life thus far might make it a little more difficult to practice these things that we're talking about. I never want to come across as dismissive of that, but our minds are incredibly powerful. So that's really what we're trying to help people harness right now.
Because there are so many stories of people in those type of environments who have risen above. I mean,
or are just plain happy. Also, like I often wonder, because I look at, granted, I'm not there. I don't know where the videos we see truly come from, but sometimes you look and the kids are playing and laughing and they're joyous because they are still just enjoying the existence that they do have.
Right.
I think that we feel like they're having what we would deem a bad experience because we only know our experience. Right?
And that's also the, oh gosh, what's it called? But it's like, I really don't like saying this, but it's like the patriarchy's like, this is how like life should be, like those
Exactly.
missionaries who would go to another country and try to like make people live life the way that we lived here in the West. And it's
And
like,
who says that's what they want?
right,
I
right.
That's funny. I had that thought always as a little kid when I would be like, "Why are we at war? Why are we trying to invade this country?" As a little kid, like, I don't understand what's going on. And I would be like, "Well, why do we think they need to live like we live?" Like, I would question this as a child, not
Hmm.
even understanding the whole concept. I've always kind of wondered that, like, who says this is the best way? Who says?
Right, right.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
tangents as usual.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. But I had a thought there that I wanted to kind of reflect on and I lost it. Okay, we'll carry on.
Okay. So the important thing to know about the law of correspondence is like how you feel is what you're manifesting, right? And what you feel, and this is where like the paradox can be, is that what you feel definitely depends on what you're consuming and exposing yourself to, right?
Mm,
So if you are constantly watching mainstream media, any kind of media, actually, if you're listening to music, like that has words, right? If you're around same people like who just say the same stories over and over and over again, right? You are going to absorb that, okay? And that's going to change how you feel. They say that you're the sum of the five people that you hang around the most. And so this is why they say, like, you don't see Ironman athletes hanging around with people who are overweight, right? Because that's just not how they spend their time. Same thing, like you don't see depressed people hanging like deeply depressed people hanging around like high level, um, business people, right? Because well, I can't say. I mean, those high level business people can be depressed, but
I
like,
was gonna say, yeah, I mean,
but
but the like attracts like kind of, you often see groups of friends
who are similar.
hanging around with similar types of people with similar interests, similar habits.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, if you could just look back at high school, the cheerleaders hang out with the cheerleaders, football players hang out with the football players and the cheerleaders. I was told that goth is not a term anymore. I don't know what it is now, but at least when I was in high school, there was like, the goth group, there was
I
the
think they're the
skaters.
emo kids now.
Is that what it
I
is?
don't know. That
Yeah.
my there's funny names I was my listening to my daughter talk about. The tryhards and like there's like all these.
Right. But we
Yeah,
all, yeah, we'll put labels and we'll group and the
right,
funny thing is like the people who are like, I don't want to be like everybody else, they all group together and
right,
form their own group of a bunch of
right.
people who don't want to be like everybody else. But,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, we will like just pay attention and notice what you're listening to, what you're, what you're watching. I've said this, I don't know if I said this to you, Deb, but, for me, I was born in 74. So growing up in like the 80s, all of the music in the 80s is like Chicago, Air Supply, Brian Adams, like all of this, like, how could I live without you?
I'm
My
so
life,
lost in love. Yeah.
I know. Chicago's coming to concert here in Charlotte, and I'm like, do I want to go to that? I don't know. Do I want to be depressed for the night? But like, I realized why for so long I struggled relationally, right? It's because I was told this story over and over that I needed to have somebody to complete me. And I
Yeah.
look and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the freaking music that I was, like Careless Whisper was my favorite song of all time. It still gets me all the time. Oh God,
I know. Well, I mean, all of popular music is usually about either it's so much of it is about love gone awry, being scorned. Like it's just like so much woe is me. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the mental diet piece, right? Like everything, your consumption is not always just about food.
no, it's not,
Yeah.
right? So just pay attention because like how you can feel can be altered by the things around you, which change the things around you because of how you feel. So it's like you're
Right.
always feeling depressed. You're going to find more reasons to be depressed. You find more reason to be depressed. You feel depressed. And it's a cycle over and over. And you have to literally break free from that. You have to choose to think different thoughts and change the environment.
Yeah.
That's why they say, like, if you're trying to get off of sugar, get it out of the house, like
Right.
change your environment.
Yeah.
I did that, and then I literally started driving after Mr. Softy, which is the ice cream truck growing up, right? But you just have to keep taking the
Mr.
things away
Soft.
that are creating this. Did you have Mr. Softy when growing up?
I do not know Mr. Softy, no.
Oh, just the music. I hear the music in my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah.
It's a funny name.
Uh,
No, but I think there's and even just watching the conversations that you have with people, and this is why sometimes when you do choose to make different choices, and you start to put yourself in a different, fairly frequent state of being, sometimes you notice that friends no longer want to talk to you because if you decide you no longer want to be the person that sits around and complains about their mother or complains about their friends or their coworkers or whatever situation, when you decide to stop doing that, and the people that always relied on you to join them at that low vibration no longer have you there,
yeah.
they may start to weave themselves out of your life, which is tough. But yeah.
I look back on my life, and when I started, for me, my shift and change, as we know, as you know, anyway, started with food, right? I had to change what I was eating. And I remember, I'm sure I shared this before, maybe even last week. I don't remember, but I remember having a conversation with a friend who was like, and this was from like my Christian world. And she was like, well, all those new age foods you're eating. And I was like, how about the food I'm eating now is actually food that's like in the Bible? Like it's food that God created. Like stuff that you're eating isn't even food. Like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because just changing my diet changed the people that I hung out with.
Right.
Right? Because I no longer wanted to consume processed stuff that wasn't real food. And so that shifted my vibration. And it was challenging at first. Now I'm like, I don't care. Um, I seem harmless.
Same if you decide to stop consuming alcohol. I mean, you'll notice because some friends, if you go out, won't care, won't even notice. And
Right.
then others will be upset with you for not joining them in a drink.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just worth noting. When you decide to make these changes, when you look at this, I think when you can look at it from this lens, though, it
Hmm.
does kind of give you a little more like, oh gosh, like I don't, maybe it's okay if some of those people, habits, places, whatever they are, if they do exit your life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's like, one of the things is just becoming like when you observe this paradox is just become an observer of your world. Like act as if you're sitting in the movie theater. I say this so much to my clients when I take them through like my conscious energy coaching protocols. It's at one point we're like just sitting in the movie theater watching the movie of your life. Right. And when you can be in that observer, oh my gosh, it gives you so much power. And you can be like, oh, wait, do I want that? No, no. Okay, let's change the story to go that way.
Totally. That's a strategy I teach in yoga a lot too, is just like coming to that role of observation, because when you can observe your reactions to things, when you can observe, yeah, when you kind of step outside of yourself and realize like in some ways you're just a character, you're an avatar, and all these other people that are around you, everything that's occurring around you is also, I mean, we talked about that in Law of Assumption, I believe, like everything is you pushed out, right? Like this is all, it kind of gets my head twisted up. But if you think of it like, am I just living in a simulation? Do I have like, I have not watched the movie that's out right now. There's a fairly recent movie that's kind of, I mean, I think it's supposed to be a comedy. It has Ryan Reynolds in it or something, but there's a movie that's kind of about this. But
Yes.
yeah, when you like kind of put yourself in that, like, it's almost like it's a game and you're just playing a game. It's
Hmm.
interesting to play with it from that perspective, right? Like just experiment with it. Like see how it changes. Spend 1 week like looking at the correspondence. Like what happens when I do this? How do people react to me when I show up like this? And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, it does matter.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's like when we go, like, we just want to move us more into now, like the how to change the cycle. Like when you are realizing, oh, wait, I don't like everything in my external world and like like how things are corresponding, what it's mirroring. So the first is just have the awareness. I don't know why I have the colon there, but have the awareness, right? And just know that like my internal world colors my external world. So imagine and think about this, but everything is black and white there, right? But then what brings it color is the emotion that you give to it. right? So if your emotion is like these bright colors, you're going to have a bright world. If your emotion is like darks and grays, then you're going to have that. Which, total aside, why is it that when we go outside and it's gray out, we're like, but if you go in a house that's painted gray, it's like, oh, this feels really nice.
Well, because I think maybe I don't know, I've not really ever pondered that, but my immediate reaction is the outdoor world, I mean, specifically nature, when it's colorful, it's alive. When it's gray, it's dead. And inside a house, grays are cooling, calm. You know, we don't necessarily expect, like, if you walked in a house that had red, orange, yellow walls, you would be like, oh my God.
Right.
Maybe it just has to do with our expectations of what those environments would be like, but
maybe
yeah.
It's just something I thought of. But
Yeah.
So your external world is colored by your internal world, right? And so if you're in a good mood and something happens that's not like the most favorable, you know, it's easier to be like, yeah, whatever, just move on, right? But if you're already in a bad mood, then it's like gets super angry, right?
And I'm sure we've all had the experience of when you get in that little downward spiral, it continues to get worse.
Yes.
Because you are in this, like, okay, I got a flat tire last week. This is a true story. And I literally
Watch
did.
her reels, go to her Instagram and watch her reels.
First time I made a reel. Well, second time I made a reel, I think. But in any case, I did have, like, I mean, the reel was made on the flip side of being able to see the humor of the situation, but I had a full on meltdown because started my day without coffee because I lacked planning the day before. Also did not have water to drink because I lacked planning the day before. Went to drop my daughter off at school, assuming I would go and get these things, but I put a white t-shirt on and no bra and thought I was just going to go through the drive-through.
I didn't even leave the house without a bra. That's brave.
And I got a flat tire. And just went to a spiral of despair about how I'm always having to do life alone and I'm never going to meet my person.
Yep. What did you do to get out of it?
Well, I mean, I called a friend crying and got some logic talked into me because he was like, because I had already been jumping up and down on the freaking jack trying to change the damn tire by myself to put the spare on so I could go to the tire shop and like just losing my mind. And he was like, just call it tow truck. And I was like, I don't want to call it tow truck. And he was like, well, don't you have roadside assistance on your insurance? And I'm like, I don't know. Look at my insurance card. Roadside assistance is part of my policy.
Yeah. And here's the irony, right? That you're like, wah, like doing life on my own. But when the opportunity comes to have assistance and have somebody help you, you're like, nope, I want to do it on my own.
Totally. Oh, I see all the irony. But back to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
That spiral continued to spiral downward because I was in a downward spiral of looking for more things to go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you'll get what you're looking for. And again, like we know, like we're all human, and there are times, especially for women, like there's certain times of the month where it's just like, poof, you just have this explosion of emotions.
You know what? Let's just add that is exactly the start of my cycle was that day as well.
Oh, yeah. There you go. See, that's why they had red tents for women, and that's how together and was like, "Hey,
bring back the red tent. Screw feminism. That is feminism."
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Instead, we're expected to like bleed out and do all these other
pretend things. It's not happening.
Gosh. I mean,
sorry, everyone. That was a big tangent.
No, but that's just life. That is life, right? And I really do my best to not schedule a ton of stuff right around when I get my cycle, because I know that I'm a hermit to begin with, but like I have to hermit even more because I'm not a nice person to be around. Like I can balance it, but I don't want to. Like it takes so much effort. And so
well, I think we've talked about some of that before, but that's a topic I would love to touch on because I have lots of thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So your first change cycle is have the awareness, notice. I mean, because even though we're laughing about like this, but Deb was at least like, she knew that she was in it, right? And she's like knew that she was making these choices. And that is very different than when you're just like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, which, I felt like that for most of my life. I remember my college boyfriend being like, Heather, you choose to be frustrated. I'm like, F you, I'm not choosing to feel like this.
Right.
Lo and behold, I was like, what I
Right.
ate 2 days prior to that changed how I felt, like in my ability to handle frustration. So
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
have the awareness. And then the second part is like, do the inner work, right? And know that you have to be in it for the long game, not for the immediate pleasure. Like, okay, well, I changed my thought. I expressed gratitude, and I, just like, I feel happy, but nothing changed. Like, give it some time. Like,
Right. And
there,
be honest with yourself. If you don't feel happy, like it's not gonna go like flip a switch. There's if you
sometimes it
follow
can.
Abraham Hicks at all,
What?
do you follow it? You follow Abraham Hicks sometimes,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that they have, and they're not the only ones that teach this, but it's where I hear it most commonly. But you can't really go from like straight up despair to like giddy, happy, loving life. Like it doesn't really work that way. You kind of have to go for the next best thing. So maybe the level up from I hate the world and my life is terrible is just like it's one notch above. Like I don't remember how that scale works, but like frustration might be better than anger, right? So just move up a little bit. Like you don't have to make that because sometimes people get, I think, a little bit all or nothing. Like
Yes.
it's not all about like what do you always say, shitting sprinkles?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Sometimes you're just pooping. They're
yeah.
not sprinkles.
Okay, it's not sprinkles. Yeah. Well, and that was one of the other points is that just to climb the emotional guidance scale and literally just Google it, right? And you'll see the scale. And you have at the top, like number one is, joy, knowledge, freedom, love, appreciation. And then 22 down at the bottom is fear, grief, depression, powerlessness, and victim, right? You can't go from powerlessness and victim, to joy and love and appreciation. You can't just flip that. I'm telling you, even if you go to the jungle and you do plant medicine for 10 days straight, like, trust me, it will be a journey to get there because there's a lot of shit that needs to come out, right? But be
Literally.
right, literally, right? But like when you can climb, like go from, powerlessness and victim, the next step above that is insecurity, guilt, and unworthiness, right? And it's like, well, I don't want to feel that. No, but is it better than feeling powerless? Yes, absolutely, right?
Mhm.
And like it is much easier. And I talk to people all the time when they're like, I'm so angry, da, da, da. And I'm like, that's awesome because I'm like, how would you have felt about this prior to the work that we did? And they're like, I just would have felt powerless and not done anything. And I'm like, good. So you're feeling something. What do you want to do with this anger? Because anger is such a great momentum. Like it creates so much momentum.
Mhm.
So, so be gentle with yourself. Don't feel like, oh, like you have to be happy all the time. And I'm sure I've talked about this before, but this is the thing that pisses me off about the coaching world. And at least specifically when I worked for Tony Robbins, I'd have other coaches who would tell their clients if they did not come onto the call with a resourceful state, then the coach would hang up on them and be like, call me back when you're in a resourceful state. And I'm like, but that is so shitty. Like
Yeah, you're abandoning people. Like that's and
the
it is I
reason is because they need help changing their state.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
and like you said, be kind to yourself because I it's easy to say that when you've had experience and practice at it, but if you've never really tried to work with that, yeah, you can't expect that you're going to be able to just flip your attitude just like that. Like it takes it takes time. Even then, I mean, even as somebody who works in this all the time, back to my freaking tire example. I mean, it didn't it was a matter of a few hours that I go through the arc, right?
right.
But I've worked on so much stuff. And even then I had to spiral out for a few hours and just sit here and be sorry for myself and like just angry about the like I had to go through all of that so that I could then be like, "Oh my gosh, okay. It's not the end of the world. I bought a couple new tires, my car is functioning again, all is well." Like and then I can laugh at how ridiculous I was being before. But
Yes.
you know, a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to make that transition in the course of one day. I might have spiraled out for a whole day and felt like, you know, such a loser because my tire went flat and I didn't have somebody to help me or whatever. I don't know what stories I would have told myself because I've let it go. But
Right.
my point being, sorry, there's a hair stuck on my arm. Yeah, that it's not like we're just saying, yeah, just lift yourself up. Just pull up your bootstraps.
Get over it,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes getting over it, it's like you like just climb the stairs.
Yeah.
Like feel how you feel. Like don't let it rule you. You can feel it. And that's where like doing a like a body scan comes in. This is something that a lot of people don't get in touch with is just saying, okay, let me take a deep breath in. Let me just notice what I'm feeling in my body. What are the sensations?
Mhm.
Where do I feel the sensations? And just doing that and just like, okay, I'm feeling this sensation right now. Like if I were to give it a name, what name would I give it to it? Right. And I'm have my eyes closed because I'm just like feeling into it. So what name would I give to it? And let me just take a couple deep breaths in. When we can take the time to do that, it can pass through us so much quicker. But it's like you're pushing a beach ball underneath the water and you're like, you can't feel it. Like you're trying to shove it down. It's always going to come pop up. But doing just that, you know, body scan is going to literally help you to you know, move it out of yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So the next step of how is be willing to make hard choices for an easy life. So this is where like what you feel is going to show up in your life, right? And so sometimes you think, okay, I'm gonna have this drink, right? That because it'll help me feel better right now, right? And it's going to cause you indigestion. It's going to cause restless leg syndrome at night. It's going to cause restless sleep at night. So then you're going to wake up in the morning feeling exhausted, which when you're exhausted is really hard to manage your mood, right? And so it sets as this whole domino, right? You're making this choice of something temporary, which doesn't help you on the long run become who you want to be. And so you have to be willing to release the things that cause you like momentary pleasure, you know, but rob you of your peace. And then
Sometimes I think those things might be hard to identify. So that's again coming back to that idea of being the observer.
Mhm.
Um, because you might mindlessly go reach for a drink or the cookies or and not that it's always putting something in your face, but you may not notice the things you do out of habit to you think you're self-soothing, right?
Mhm.
But you're really self-sabotaging.
Right.
So again, going back to that observe how you're reacting to that. That's a
Yes.
powerful one.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's really like the last thing that you know that we show. Wait a minute. No, wrong thing. Um I don't know where my banner went, but it is just allowing yourself to look in the mirror, like
Mhm.
just look in the mirror and see what you're seeing. Oh, is that person going to the refrigerator? I did this weekend, or well, yesterday actually. I had we have this group of friends. I know Deb knows this. Who we made it up at. There's a cemetery that's behind me, 72 acres. Everybody walks and runs their dog there and all this stuff. So I know it sounds weird, but there's this group of us that get together every day. And one of the guys has a place at the lake. So we've started, like, we did our second annual dog day at the lake on Sunday or Saturday. Well, if anybody knows me, they know that I cannot go to a potluck and bring one thing. Like it is impossible for me to do because my background as a chef, like, and having owned a bakery, I'm like, but I need to bring all of these things, right? So I brought like 5 desserts and 2 dishes, and the 5 desserts. Of course, there was a ton left, so then I bring them home. Well, yesterday I get here and I'm dog sitting, which is why I'm in a different place. And I was like, ah, and I kept going to the refrigerator and eating brown rice crispy treats, double chocolate chip cookie cake,
Yeah.
lemon glazed blueberry bar. And I'm like, I'm doing this because I'm overwhelmed and I need to stop
Yeah.
doing this, right? I heard somewhere, I don't know how true this is, but it made sense, is that you can't digest food and digest feelings at the same time.
Oh, I like that. I've never heard that, but that is super interesting because that like sometimes you just hear something, you're like, wow, that's powerful. I don't think much of I don't eat out of emotions generally. Sometimes boredom, but is that's super like if you think about like, okay, what am I trying to process right now?
Or not.
Which choice do you want to make?
Right.
That's super I love that. I
I
love that.
right?
Yeah.
And I thought that when I was doing this, and I was like, what don't I want to feel right now? And I was like, oh, I don't want to feel this frustration. And I had to really like rein it in and be like, okay, like I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And then I was like, okay, is eating this going to help me to feel less frustrated and overwhelmed? I'm like,
Probably
no,
not.
it's gonna
I
make
think that's a powerful one for mine might be I mean, I don't drink very much, but sometimes, like, if I'm like, "Oh, I feel like having a glass of wine." I mean, I think in my personal experience lately for, like, a couple more than a couple years now, I've really kind of changed that for myself, but I will say for the in the past, I mean, that's why I knew I had to make a change is it would be, "I had a hard day, I can't wait to pour a glass of wine." So, I my little
hmm
reminder might be I can't digest alcohol and feelings at the same time.
hmm
But I mean, I think that would be true too, because if it is alcohol that you struggle with over the food choices, I mean, it's numbing. It's numbing. So that makes sense to me that you would not be able to process that and feelings
Yeah.
at the same
Yep.
time.
Yeah, because then like yes, yeah, it's definitely something to ponder for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just noticing like like, like this law is all about seeing what's going on internally when you're not being conscious and aware, right? So it literally is like making the choice to be conscious. My favorite quote, I will say this 1,000 times, right? Until we make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is everything why I do what I do as far as my coaching and why I do energy work and coaching, because we have to be able to bring these things to light.
Mhm.
Um, this whole law is all about like, okay, what am I focused on the most? Am I looking for things outside of me to avoid the uncomfortable emotions like we just talked about? Like, what things do I keep doing that drain me over and over again? How much pleasure do I allow myself to experience each day? I mean, that is a big one. In my Facebook group, we've been working on doing group energy clearings on stuff around pleasure. It's okay to feel pleasure. It's desire. It's like, it's safe for me to feel pleasure, because we could talk about that for a long time too, right? About women and feeling pleasure. Um, we don't allow ourselves, to do that, and just noticing that, right? But
Yep.
I think like we can wrap up with the idea that this whole law is about like people have heard the statement before, as within so without, and as above so below, right? And
Mhm.
that the quality of your life is determined upon the quality of your thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay? If you have a crappy life, guaranteed you're going to have crappy thoughts.
Mhm.
Like I don't know anybody who has an amazing life that has crappy thoughts.
Right.
And I know people, I've shared the story. I've been on small planes, like private planes with millionaires, right? Who've had what seems like amazing lives, but to them, it wasn't. They were miserable because they had really crappy thoughts.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean, the fact that amazing life does not equate to private jet is a different topic, but
like what the world would say, is amazing.
Yes,
They could jet
yes,
all over the place. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But to them,
yeah,
it's not. But I've been with people who are homeless who just are like, my gosh, my life is amazing, right?
yeah,
And
right.
so that ultimately, not that people want to be homeless, but ultimately to have the internal peace that I can have nothing and feel amazing. I can have everything and feel amazing. The feeling amazing has to do with me and
It's in
not
there.
like,
Has nothing to do with the outside world. And
right.
gratitude. Gratitude is a huge piece of it.
hmm
Gratitude for every bit of it. Gratitude even for what seems to be shitty in the moment.
Yeah.
That's a powerful exercise.
I'm sure I've shared this with you, but I love this story. I don't know where I heard it. I don't think I made this up, but like you imagine walking down this, like in a city, and you have two street corners, and come up to street corner number one, and there's a guy out with a guitar, and he's playing, and he's got this like scowl on his face, and he's, got the guitar open, and he passes by, and he's like, "You're not going to give me any money? What? That's it? You're just going to smile?" Right? And you're just kind of like, ugh, like,
Right.
I don't want to give him any of my money, right? And you cross the street, and there's another guy, same thing, guitar case open, and he's playing, and somebody drops a penny in, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I so appreciate that." Right? Well, you want to do everything you can to walk by that guy's corner and keep throwing money in, because you're like,
Right.
wow, this guy is so grateful. Even for the smallest thing. And he's like, "Oh, thank you for your smile. Thank you for clapping. I so appreciate that."
Mhm.
Gosh, that energy is unbelievable when it comes to helping you to attract, what you want. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good story to end on. I like it.
Yeah. So we will be back with another law. We haven't decided on which one yet, but we will be back. And, if you really find that you struggle with this, and, you're like, okay, I realize that internally, like I live in emotions of guilt and shame and frustration, and lack, let us help you. Like, I have this amazing process that I've created called conscious, or that I don't even know what it's called. The conscious energy coaching, where we combine coaching and energy work. And I've never before, as Deb can tell you, I used to always just do 6-month programs. I've never worked with people in a one-off session before, unless I've worked with them in a 6 months. But I'm opening this up. And so this is until May 21st anyway. You can schedule a call, and I didn't even think to pull this up. Schedule a call, and you can use coupon code MOM22 for $25 off. I just need to drop this in there. Well, just send me a message actually, and then I'll send you the link to schedule it, because I'll put it in the links. But here you can find me right there. Deb has so many great things too. Here's
God, I have too much going on, but yes, if you follow me on Instagram, you can try to keep up. Yeah.
So again, you can find me here, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another law helping you to create the life that you want.
Yep.
See ya.
Bye.